The next expansion for the Elder Scrolls Legends, Alliance War, is finally here. It's out today. It's actually out right now. And as you would imagine, there's probably going to be an awful lot of deck testing videos coming out in the next week or two because there's going to be lists that I want to try, cards that I want to try, things like that. But I wanted to start things off with a bit of a different video because the expansion did just come out. And I wanted to talk about the 5 cards that I think are the safest to craft from this set, because anytime you get new cards in a pack-based expansion, people are wanting to know what to spend their soul gems on. On the gold side of things, you just buy packs, right? But you want to know, like, hey, what's a safe investment? What is something that, even if I don't think I'm going to play with it right now, what can I craft because I know it's going to be used in decks? And that's what this video is about. Right out of the gate, I'm going to talk about Debilitate. Now, Debilitate is interesting because it is a board-wide removal spell. And when I say board-wide, I don't mean a lane, I mean the entire board. And traditionally, the meta has been kind of defined by the only other reasonably decent board-wide removal spell in the form of Ice Storm. Ice Storm is a meta-defining card, just plain period. If you are running an aggressive deck, you're always trying to race Ice Storm or get as much value out of your creatures before they die to Ice Storm. Similarly, if you're playing a control deck, you either need a lot of tricks up your sleeve or you're running Ice Storm and hoping that that will be enough to slow things down for you to then stabilize late into the game. So the fact that we are getting a different one, and it's arguable whether or not Debilitate is better or worse, I think that's going to end up being situational, but the fact that we're getting a different one is a really big deal in Legends because Ice Storm has been so meta-defining, and now you have the option, if you don't want to run Intelligence, you could just run Agility and kind of bank on Debilitate. Decks that already run both, like Telvanni, for example, are likely going to run both. Whether or not it's 3 copies of each is yet to be seen. It might be some combination of the two, but Debilitate is going to see play. Just period. It's good enough to see play. It's a unique enough effect in that only Ice Storm comes close to comparing, that you can expect Debilitate to be played in some meta decks, and as such, it's a safe craft. And if you are looking for safe things to craft, this is a great place to start. Next up, I want to talk about Abner. So Abner Thorn is a unique legend, but it is a unique legend that is incredibly powerful. This is going to be a card very similar to Uncano. And what I mean by that is that if you're running Intelligence, 9 times out of 10 you're also running Uncano. He's just that good. Abner Thorn is going to fit that bill, in my opinion. If you're running Intelligence, it's going to be hard-pressed for me to not run Abner Thorn in an Intelligence deck because it's so versatile. Even if your own deck doesn't have an awful lot of summon effects itself, you can run Abner Thorn and still copy the summon effects of your opponent's creatures. Anyway, the real trick here is that any deck that runs both Intelligence and Necromancers, Telvanni, they want Abner Thorn because Abner Thorn can copy a Necromancer but already has 5 power. So you can get a Necromancer on steroids for the exact same cost of 6 Magicka, and that alone is worth running this. But again, the flexibility, the versatility of this card is kind of off the charts, and the fact that you get a 5/5 body, which is entirely reasonable for such a powerful effect on a 6-cost creature, is kind of absurd. So Abner is a really safe craft. The next card on my list is also a unique legend, and this is our resident Scorn King. Now, the thing about the Scorn King is that it is a unique legend that is part of the tricolor combination for Ebonheart. And you might say to yourself, well, aren't all the unique legends for the tricolor combinations worth crafting? Aren't I going to want to run all of them? And the answer is no. I think the Scorn King might be the only one that is a for sure auto-include in every variation of a tricolor deck. And what I mean by that is if you're playing aggro, midrange, or control in Ebonheart, you want the Scorn King in your deck. The same cannot be said of the other unique legends, in my opinion. For example, if you're running an aggressive, like token-based Guildsworn deck, you do not care about that unique legend. If you are running an aggressive mid-range deck, you may not want to run the tricolor iron, because the regular iron's already likely better to begin with, but it's also much lower on curve. Iron might end up being the next closest to being like an auto include, but Clivia is certainly only going to be in certain styles of decks, typically token decks, and so on and so forth. So the Scorn King, you're going to want to put the Scorn King in every single one of your Ebonheart decks. This is the Archcanon Soriani, if you will, of this set, in that with Archcanon, you always stick it in any of your Tribunal decks because it's just far and away the best Tribunal card, and the Scorn King is far and away the best Ebonheart card. So this is a very safe craft for you if you're wondering what to craft from this set. Now, the next suggestion, a little bit of a similar suggestion, but going in the other direction. This is the Guildsworn Apprentice. This is essentially the same concept as the Scorn King, but not on a unique legend. If you are running red, yellow, and blue, if you're running Guildsworn, you're running 3 copies of this card. I don't care if it's an aggressive version of the deck or a control version of the deck. This card is just an awful lot of stats packed into a single creature. It's very, very good. It's very strong. This is, in my opinion, probably the best of the Guildsworn cards. You're going to run this card if you run Guildsworn ever. It's a very safe craft in that regard. Like I said, you might not always run the unique legend in that particular color combination. You will always run this card. Like, even if you're running some, you know, blue, yellow, red token deck that wants to be like Token Mage and Crusader combined, you still want to run this card. So this card is good. And the last card that I want to mention, so the 5th card on my safe craft list, is probably not a shock if you've been listening to me at all before the expansion came out, and that is Bandari Opportunist. This card is bananas. Yes, I'm biased because it has the word charge on it, and I will put it in a lot of my charge-based decks, but the reality is this card already enhances existing archetypes incredibly well. So things like Abomination Scout really love this card. In my opinion, I think Halalu, both the aggressive versions of Halalu and the more mid-rangey ones that actually still use Haunted Manor, they both love this card. Agility was, you know, outside of Mournhold Trader, kind of like the weird flex position. You needed to run a certain number of agility creatures so that your Halalu Oathman would be able to trigger. But, you know, you were running things like Morgtong, Aspirant, or Deepwood Tracker because the cheap agility creatures were good, not great, is the way that I'll call it. And this gives you a lot of flexibility because, you know, it's burst damage and it's a nice agility creature, and it shuffles more into your deck so that you can continued use out of it. It cycles all future versions of itself, if you will. So it's just a really good, flexible card. And this is not counting whether or not somebody finds a great way to break this card and develop some sort of like OTK combo deck, which is entirely possible with a card like this. But the reality is, it just does really good things on a cheap body. And, you know, even if you want to go as far as like, you know, in the past, we've had like Stealer of Secrets decks, for example, and you either would run them in Battle Mage because that gave you access to Nord Firebrand, or Mage versions would also, for example, use Shadowmere because that was the only other cheap access to charge creature that you really had that made that deck viable. In theory, and I'm not saying this is going to be a thing, but like in theory, if you really wanted to build a Stealer of Secrets in Assassin now, Opportunist makes that something that you could potentially do. You can run Ice Storm and Debilitate, hey, another card from this list, and a bunch of other removal options, and then use the Opportunist, Stealer, Secrets, Mentor's Ring combo to finish your opponent off, get that OTK. Again, do I think that's going to be a meta deck? Probably not, but Opportunist just opens up deck building opportunities while also enhancing existing decks incredibly well, so I think this is a very safe craft. And that is it. That rounds out my top 5. So if you made it this far, thanks for watching. As always, I like to hear from you. So if you think there are other cards that are must craft cards from the set, you can feel free to put that in the comments below, because other people are probably looking for some inspiration and you can help them out. But anyway, the set's out. Enjoy it. I love you all. Thanks for watching. Until next time, may you walk on warm sands.